Wondering which flagships and crew you should reset or which warships you should exchange? In this video, we're going to help figure out exactly what you should be considering when evaluating your collection to see which things you should turn back in and which investments you should double down on. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in this video, sponsored by the makers of Infinite Galaxy, we're going to review this limited time fleet adjustment event, which is such a big deal. I have literally spent all week trying to figure out exactly which of these things I want to reset. Now, this was in some nebulas as sort of a testing grounds before it's released to all nebulas, so by the time you're watching this, it may be in your nebula or may be about to arrive. So let's talk about exactly how this works. You can reset your flagships and you get everything back. The resources you put into them, you get all the experience back, and you get back all of the blueprints in the form of universals or Federation Advanced credits for a legendary and Federation credits for an epic. Now, I already went and did a couple investments, but I want to walk through which things I have reset so far, which things I'm about to reset for you together in this video, and why I made those choices. And I just want to present this idea very briefly now, and we'll cover it much more in depth in a future video. So if you're interested, by the way, in strategy for flagships and flagship combinations, throw a like on here and consider subscribing to the channel. What I want to talk about first is, before you go reset anything, figure out how many fleets you want to run. When you're battling other players, is it one fleet? Is it two fleets? Three? Most people don't do more than three. Maybe you'll do four. I'm going to give you a couple considerations, and really I'm going to narrow it down to you to the 2 or 3 fleet configuration. In the 3 fleet configuration, you do what is probably the most obvious possible choice, which is to say, I'm going to have a fleet for frigates, a fleet for destroyers, and a fleet for cruisers, and you pick the flagships that give them the most bonuses, and that's a pretty obvious strategic choice. That does require you, however, to have a lot of flagships, and most people simply are not at that place in the game yet. We're still in the, early time horizon for this game. Some number of months it's been out, not years, and most people don't have that yet. So what I would recommend for most players is instead a 2 fleet configuration, potentially a 1 fleet configuration, but that's a little crazy. So what I would recommend for a 2 fleet configuration is you pick, for example, one type of warship and you go all in. So for instance, maybe if you're doing frigates, you choose the Artemis and the Orion. That's the legendary and the epic tier flagship. For frigates, you go all in on that plan and you put all your frigates into that fleet. And in the second fleet, you use flagships that are good for a combination of warships, and you'd use some amount of destroyers, you'd use some amount of cruisers, and what you could do to be really slick is you could do, for example, all tier 8 of the cruisers, which have laser type damage, and all tier 9 of the destroyers that do all laser type damage as well. So you can have a secondary fleet that is using the same weapon typing, and you use flagships that are good for whatever warships you want to bring. So just to give a couple examples of that, right? You could use a flagship like, say, the Titan, which, okay, that's not a laser-based one. How about the Odysseus? It's laser-based, as I was just describing, and it doesn't care at all about what type of warship you're bringing. Just as an example, this is the legendary tier, but of course there's the epic tier as well. You could look at the Theseus. You could use the Apollo. You pick flagships that in combination work really well together, but also don't really care all that much about the type of warship that you're bringing. And you do the best you can to sort of match the weapon effect right over here to the type of warship you're bringing. So we'll cover this more in depth in a future video, but I really wanted to hit on that core idea for, are you doing 2 fleets or 3 fleets? This influences the number of crew you need and more. So this is important to figure out in advance. Most people, I think, 2 fleets is the way to go. So I chose, however, to do 3 fleets because I'm whaling in this game. That means that I've got a couple options. I personally am going with the Artemis paired with the Orion. I'm using the Hephaestus, and sometimes I'll pair it with the Cyclops. Hephaestus doesn't care about the type of warship you use. And once I'm out of cruisers, or if I need destroyers, I'm going to use the Hades, and I'm going to pair that with the Hephaestus. I'm using the same sort of a strategy for now. When I have more warships, I'll actually be bringing 3 fleets out at a time. But for now, I'm actually sticking to 2 fleets out and about at a time. And maybe, over time, I'll work on the Rhadamanthus as a stepping stone to getting to 3 fleets all the time. But I found that even after I did my reset and after all the spending I'm doing, that I could really only go like all in on a small number of combos. For me, that's the Artemis and that's the Orion, but that's enough of my working through the combinations. For now, I just want to call out a couple things when it comes to resetting. Number 1, if you have any boxes that award flagship blueprints, open all of them before you go any further. Start there. Number 2, when you're going to go and reset, honestly, I'm getting a look at resetting the Athena right now. Somehow I have a ton of this, so I'm going to get rid of those, I think, to sort of reclaim those credits. You also might have a ton of the gathering ships, the Jason I have a ton of. I also have a ton of the Argo. Do I really need the tiny % extra gathering boost? Am I looking at the game personally that much that like I'll be able to send it back out to gather that much quicker because I saw that it finished? Nah, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm going to reset the Argo. Even though I think that the Argo and the Jason are actually kind of a cool pair for gathering together, I assume that over time you'll get more of these, and I'd rather have the warships. So I'm going to reset the Jason. I'm going to reset the Argo. I'm going to keep my Peleus and my Achilles. I debated resetting the Achilles. I think that would be a reasonable choice, but I think I'm going to reset it. And I'm going to reset the Athena here, okay? Those are going to be the flagships that I reset. In fact, why don't I just fully commit to this right now and do the reset? Gosh bless. Can I do this while my flagship's out and about? Oh, my flagship's home. Just kidding. I can do this right now. Here we go. Flagship reset. Okay, we're committing. Resetting the Jason. Full commit here. Done. Resetting the Argo. Yikes. Reset. Done. Even getting some resources back, which is kind of nice. And my 5th reset is on the Athena. I'm resetting the Athena to reclaim these, to use other places. You may be wondering, whoa, Chisgule, why not the, the Hercules, right? I actually think that for PvE, this is a pretty legit ship to have, and I probably should be taking better advantage of that. I need to look into that in the future and how I'm doing that. So anyways, Athena, I'm resetting. If you had heavily invested, by the way, one last call out here, if you had invested very heavily in the Prometheus, this is like the best exchange and event you've ever done. Reset your Prometheus and you just get a ridiculous amount of value. That's because the Prometheus here is kind of cheaper than literally anything else, but oh well, is what it is. So I'm going to do my last fleet or flagship reset here. Here it is, the Athena. Rip. Okay, it's done. I'm fully committed now. Now, having made those commitments, I actually can do some really cool stuff. For example, the Orion, I probably can take to rank 12. It is a pretty massive amount of resources to go and do that. I don't know if I want to do this right now, but that's something that I probably will do. I can then use some of those other Federation credits toward other flagships, which no doubt I'll go and do in the not-too-distant future. And, by the way, those Federation advanced credits are kind of nice. I can use those toward a whole bunch of flagships. I've got a lot of those saved up that I think I'm going to drop into the Hades. And, like, you can see, like, yeah, I've got 314 turn-ins that I can do, which is pretty nice. And at the Epic tier, I've got 344 turn-ins, made possible by doing these resets, allowing me to focus on a few really exceptional flagships and go kind of all in. And I think that strategy is really awesome. So I've got a lot of possibilities for what I can do here, and I'm really hyped for that. But now we need to talk about crew resets, because this is the other piece of the puzzle that, depending on how many warships you're intending or flagship combos you're intending to run, you may want to reset some number of these crew members. And I'm really struggling with this. I'm going to be honest. Let me tell you what the obvious strategy is. The obvious strategy is to pick crew members that you have that are really high that you're not using. Like, I don't use Harvey Garrett Wild, and drop it all into a crew member like Justin Gavin Vaughn, who's badass and awesome. And like, yeah, you'd want him ranked up. I kind of want to have some of these other crew members so I can test them and know whether or not they're good. So that's what I'm struggling with, is to what extent do I, as a content creator, want to have access to these things to be able to show them to you? I think I want to have them. And that's really weird. But before you go and you do any crew resets, the first thing that you should do, slam dunk, no question, is to go and spend your crew points. You need to go recruit crew if you've got any of this lying around. I do, because I save it for making videos just like this one. So I'm going to recruit a bunch of crew now, just to get this done and do it on camera, right? But also because you should do all of these resets, or not resets, all of these summons before you do the resets, so that if you get extra blueprints for a crew member that you're like not interested in, when you go to turn that in and you do the reset, you'll get more universal credits, which is really nice. So making some lemonade out of lemons for sure there. Boom. Bunch of crew members that I'm not overly hyped about, although I will say 700 crew experience is literally the jam. We'll rip open another one of these. Hello, full Justin. That's what I'm talking about. Boom. Now, because there are not a ton of crew members right now, I actually find myself leaning back on Zen Wenzhao, who's a crew member that I actually thought like I would never use her because I'm just not all that hyped about what she does, but I'm using her again. And I actually made Laura one of my captains because I need a bunch of captains, and she's legendary. She's got legendary stats. She lets me bring more warships to the party. I feel like she's pretty solid, so now I'm using her as a captain, which is kind of interesting. We'll talk more about captain choices in another video, but I don't know. Laura seems like a really good candidate for most people to reset, and then you dump all of those sort of universals into some other crew member that you're perhaps more hyped about. For example, you could use the frigate specialist, and like, man, that's a great crew member for a frigate fleet. More crew experience here is really nice pickup. We'll recruit again. Okay, hey, Robbie Sonny Nicholas. Also a really good captain, as it turns out, but I can't imagine I would ever take her out of the role of being a crew member unless I'm about to go to war. And then I guess I captain her because, I mean, the extra warship speed for building is like really good. Ooh, Captain Goodman. Hello, baby. Nice. Okay, and I think I've got one of these over here. Yep, guaranteed pull. Ugh, John Smith Connor. This is one of the crew members that I think I'm going to hold on to, but I think most people should probably just bite the bullet and exchange. Let's keep doing a few more summons here just to get a bunch of this done before maybe I make a last-minute choice to actually reset some of these crew members. There's Robbie Sonny Nicholas. There's a full Rebecca Anson Harmony, which is awesome. There's a full Trekkie. Love it. Okay. We'll do this one more time. That'll leave me some amount of these in case there's an event for it. Oh, all right. Didn't get anything special there. And then the guaranteed pull is, hey, Helen. That's awesome. Okay. So after you've done that, right, and you go in and you can update any crew that need updating here. You rank them up if you want. Then I think it makes sense to go and reset. Now, you should not probably save your summons like I have been. You should probably burn through all of them if you are planning to reset some of these crew members. I don't think I got, one upgrade. Robbie Sonny Nicholas. I'll take it. She's all the way up to rank 12, which is pretty amazing. There we go. Okay, Karen. Blue crew member. Why not? Any other crew members? Updates. Ooh, okay. Blue crew members getting some upgrades here becomes increasingly relevant with just the number of captains you're going to need. Okay, cool. So to do a crew reset, you'll go in over here, you'll select the crew member, you get all your experience back, and you get some number of these universal data cards, okay? Now, those universal data cards you will take to an exchange event, which is in your event's heroic fame, and you exchange one for other crew members. You can get upwards of 500 of any one crew member exchanged, which is probably the max rank, I would guess. If not, it's close to it. Make sure you don't go over on this, because that would kind of suck. And one consideration here is that if you push one of these crew members to the max, then every time you get them, you'll just be using them for the reclaim shop. So I don't know. Consider exactly how much you want to take them to the max versus just getting them closer to being maxed. I think that's a worthy consideration. So if I were looking at the crew members that I think are probably most worthy of being reset, I'm going to point out 5 that I think are really, really good candidates, although you can make your own choices here. I think Laura at the legendary tier is a good candidate. I think John Smith Connor is a good candidate. Dorothy Milton is another good candidate. Harvey Garrett Wild is another great candidate for a reset. That gives us 4 crew members that we've reset here. And then the 5th crew member that you would reset, this is a little bit more tough because a lot of these crew members are good in a bunch of different situations. But if there's a gathering crew member that you're not using, I think you could go and you could make that choice to reset one of them. So as an example, I'm using this crew member actually very heavily for gathering from planets. But if you were always gathering from something other than, well, I guess this is both titanium steel. I'm actually not using her, but I have in the past. But let's say, for example, Lincoln, right? As a captain, he does titanium steel gathering speed and deuterium. Well, I'm not really gathering any of that right now. I am mostly gathering plasma and nickel. So this is a crew member, as an example, that you could go and reset, and that would be a pretty interesting choice for getting those universals. He gives flagship repair speed normally, which, I don't know, hasn't been that important, it seems like. Again, you run a little bit of risk that these crew members become hyper-relevant in the future, but that's how you could do that reset. The last thing I want to talk about is your Warship Exchange. This is where you can take one type of warship and move it into another type of warship. So here you can see I've loaded up my frigates. I have the option. I could do cruisers. I could also do destroyers. You select by tapping one or the other, and you smash the exchange button, and you exchange that amount. There's an unlimited amount of these exchanges, and what I decided to do, for better or worse, was take my lower tiers of warships and convert them into destroyers. Destroyers is the type of warship I have the least of currently, and also I figured the load bonus is actually higher on destroyers than other warship types, so I figured, you know what, I'm just going to move them over to destroyers. I don't really know what to do with lower tiers of warships currently anyways, but I moved them over here. That's what I've chosen to do. But if you are rebalancing your flagships, this is a really important thing to do as an example, where you might say, I'm going all in on frigates, right? And if you were doing that, you could take all your destroyers and you could move them over to frigates. And something to keep in mind is that the game won't let you change around any of the warships that you actually have out and about. So right now I have my highest tier warships actually not in my city. They're out doing stuff. So keep that in mind. They have to actually have returned back to your city to be able to exchange them. So if you don't see all your warships here that you were expecting, that might be why. All in all, I think this fleet adjustment event is a big deal. It gives us a lot of opportunity to test out new stuff, try new things. This is the time. Don't be afraid to do a full reset on something that you had committed to in the past. I fully reset my Brontos. I fully reset the Odysseus. I figure I'll get more of the Odysseus over time through spending events. Personally, that's what I'm doing. And the Brontos, you know, I got the Cyclops, and I didn't like doubling down on the idea that, you know, you're going to have defeated all of the other unit types and frigates is the only type left, right? I talked about this in another video. I'll have a card up in the top, but skills like this one make me really skittish. Things that only matter if there aren't any destroyers and aren't any cruisers left. So check out that video if you want more information on why I'm perhaps skittish on the Brontos. I reset it, my personal choice. Hopefully you enjoy this event, and let me know down below in the comments if there's anything else I should have considered or done. And until next time, you have fun smashing your nebula.